Hello and welcome to another Huns History Nest podcast, where history is enjoyed and salvaged forever.
This podcast is titled Continuing Compromise, as seen here in the upper right-hand corner. The goal of this is for us to understand how maintaining a delicate balance in the United States government was a necessity in the years prior to the Civil War. And this delicate balance existed between the slave states and the free states. The slightest tip of one side to the other could throw off this delicate balance and ultimately lead to civil war. And at this time, in 1820, the United States of America basically had 11 free states and 11 slave states. In order to begin this, I want us to start with how a state is created. And it all starts with territories. And territories deal with the number of people, and our country was growing immensely in population. And the first thing that the United States government does is our Congress will establish boundaries for these territories. Once a boundary is established, it then becomes an unorganized territory in which we have an appointed territorial governor in charge. The third step is when we get people there. When 5,000 legal voters arrive, they then change from unorganized to an organized territorial status. Once that 5,000 increases to 60,000 individuals, they can then create a territorial constitution and send it to the government. Congress will read over the Constitution, and then, after that fifth step, they then vote on statehood. The first challenge the United States of America will have to the delicate balance is going to come in the year 1820, and it's going to be basically coming due to the fact that a new state, which is ultimately going to be a slave state, is Missouri. So we need a compromise, and the person that will come up with this compromise is this individual seen here, Henry Clay of Kentucky. And his compromise is to do this, that ultimately Missouri will be a slave state. So it will be number 12. The key here, though, is how to balance that out. To balance that out, he would declare Maine a free state, who has wanted statehood for quite some time, and so they will be the 12th free state. Thus, ultimately, the delicate balance would now be at 12. But in an effort to try and fix this for future years, he comes up with an idea. And Henry Clay's idea is that he will establish a line. This line would ultimately become known as the Missouri Compromise Line. And what it was is it was a line that went around Missouri here and then extended west. And it ended where the U.S. border in 1820 was, and everything above the line would be free, everything below it would be slave. Everything seemed to be going along rather well, but this delicate balance would face issue very shortly. In 1848, the United States of America would win the Mexican War and ultimately gain the Mexican Cession. Once gaining all of this new land, as we can see over here on the map, the U.S. border would change and change drastically, and that border would now extend westward, and it would incorporate much more land, and we would ultimately have the southern border become the Rio Grande, and we would occupy all of this. Well, now, once we have all of this land here, the question becomes, does that Missouri Compromise line still exist? Does it go further west? What are we going to do? One individual quickly came up with an idea, and his name was David Wilmot, a Quaker from Pennsylvania, a free state, and Quakers were opposed to slavery. He proposed, and proviso means proposal, that all new land would be free land, okay, and they would outlaw slavery. The bill was defeated in Congress, and ultimately it gave rise to the idea that free and slave states, because it was 14 to 15, are going to play a huge role in politics, and we're going to examine this in the next podcast.